It's 6 o'clock. I would call this meeting of the Arlington County Electoral Board to order. Our first order of business is going to be a closed session, so I move.
But not everybody who needs to be in closed. We're expecting other people, right? Or is it just you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I would move that pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2, 3711A 7 and 8.
See that again,
711 A 7 and 8. That the board do go into closed session for the purpose of consulting with the Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney regarding the non-citizen voting issues that we have referred to the office. And that Gretchen Reinemeyer, the Director of Elections, and Nasir Aborton. Are you an assistant Commonwealth Attorney?
I'm a deputy.
Deputy Commonwealth Attorney. I wasn't sure what the proper terminology was. Deputy Commonwealth Attorney, join us for that closed session.
I seconded.
Any discussion? I'm not even sure.
I think it probably is better if we be the ones to move.
Yeah.
Just so that if anybody arrives later,
Yes.
it's about
Yeah,
a place
that's
to
fair.
come to.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All in favor?
But that does not.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, we will be back.
That does not preclude anyone from getting ice cream. I would push my chair and come all over room.
All right, it's 6:28.
Yes.
You need to change the slide.
Have a good one.
All righty. We are back. I forget the precise, hold on, it's here.
Make a motion to move out of.
I move that we come out of closed session
Then only this.
and certify that only public business matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the session were heard, discussed, or considered.
I second that.
Hold on a second before we do a voice vote. Let me just,
Well, we're going to do a roll vote. So when the secretary is ready, she may call the vote.
okay. All right, so we're gonna confirm this via roll vote. Mr. Sharifo,
Aye.
Mr. Sam,
Aye.
and Ms. Phillips. Aye.
Righty, we are back. The next item, it is 6:29. The next item on the agenda is to adopt the minutes from the April 8th meeting. I move that the minutes be adopted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Sure. Don't suppose anybody took a list of comment people.
No, that would have been really smart.
Yeah, while we were gone. Then we will just, folks in the room, would anybody like to make public comment? And then we'll ask. So, Brian.
Be answered maybe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the question was for the mail-in ballots that were delivered, that were returned undeliverable. What is the process? So my understanding is that the election office will mark them as being returned unawares, and that the election office, state election office, will send out a request for verification of address. And then if that doesn't come back, then they're put on the inactive status. And I was just curious if that was correct and if there was any update on that process. That's that.
Would you like me to answer?
I would,
Okay.
because I don't, I mean, I know parts of the answer, but I don't.
Yeah, so obviously I can't speak for all 133 jurisdictions in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but the policy in Arlington is to flag all returned mail marked undeliverable in the state system. And to the best of our ability, there are times where you get stuff back where you can't read it. It's in a body bag, as I like to call it, from the post office, things like that. And there are different reasons for why mail is returned to us. So if somebody has a temporary forwarding order on their address, then we wouldn't necessarily flag that. And then obviously, as an election, as we get closer to an election, because we have tight deadlines and marking, it's more important to get ballots like marked and counted than it is to go through and systematically catalog all the undeliverable ballots. So we do the best as we can, but is every return ballot flagged? No. Like I said, I would say gross majority of them are, but it's not the priority in each October. So, and because we have to package up all ballots within 10 days of the election, get them over to the clerk of the court. If it doesn't get done, it just doesn't get done. So, yeah. So when correspondence, and it's any correspondence, anytime we mail a voter something or we get something that we've mailed to a voter back, when it gets marked in the system as undeliverable, then the state is supposed to send them a confirmation notice. All of this is outlined in the National Voter Registration Act. It's a list maintenance process authorized by the federal government. So they will be mailed a confirmation notice. If they do not respond to that confirmation notice in a certain number of days, then they are marked inactive in the system, and they will remain inactive until another action on their record is taken, such as them updating their address or voting. If they remain inactive through 2 federal elections, then they will be removed from the rolls. So. But to the best of my knowledge, there's not a legal requirement that says that we have to mark every ballot undeliverable. Like I said, we do our best to do so.
There's no time after the election. So you have to send it to the clerk.
Any ballot needs to
There's
go to the
no,
clerk.
like all of the ballots, unlike normal undeliverable mail, which we can retain for 4 years, ballots, all ballots have to be, so if it's a ballot, it's got to go over to the clerk. So I would say I think last fall we were staffed and we were able to keep up with those things. But like I said, it's not always the case. And then in a busy election where you can get to things like that. And we also do our best to notify voters, letting them know if we have a phone number or email, letting them know that their ballot was returned to us marked undeliverable. Because there are times where it's not addressed correctly, or a lot of college students, they just have trouble getting mail. So.
Anybody else in the room? James? Is there anybody that has called in to the Teams meeting that would like to make a comment? Feel free to take yourselves off mute or raise your hand or. I don't see any, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is election officer appointments. The principal, deputy registrar, is that what we call you now?
Been the deputy director the whole time.
Principal Grand.
Principal Grand Poobah of Elections has submitted a list of 30 names. Anything we should know about anybody?
They're all registered to vote in the state
Okay.
of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia.
All right. Then I would move that we appoint the 13 individuals listed for a term commencing immediately and expiring on February 28th, 2026.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations to our 13 new officers.
Immediately put to work.
Ms. Meyer may proceed with the notification. The next item on the agenda is our provisional ballot log policy. The question has come up a number of times. So we've determined that it's probably best to address the issue. For purposes of discussion, I will move that we adopt the general policy that we have followed in the past, which is that the provisional ballot log is available at the provisional ballot meeting. It cannot be removed from the meeting. It is then sealed up with the rest of the provisional ballot material and sent to the clerk for his retention according to code. I don't know how long he keeps that.
It's
Years?
different for, so the retention schedule for federal election is 20 years. And for a statewide election, it'll be 1 year.
Okay.
Go ahead and set the code on
The code section for provisionals is 24.2670. No, that's not right. Yeah, 653.01.
there. I will second
I
that.
believe
Any comment on that? Or
no, well, we can go back to public comment later, but for now, that's the motion so that we can have a discussion of it.
I'll second.
Okay. I would point out that there is, now granted, it was not like last fall or anything, but the most recent guidance from elect is this policy, that the way that the code is laid out, the interpretation that elect advises is that the provisional ballot log is available during the meeting to authorized representatives who are in the room. They may take notes on it, not on it, the list, but about it.
Right.
How about that?
Yeah.
They could copy the list, given enough time. But they can't take the list, even the redacted version of the list, out of the room, off to their things. Also, because under 653.1E, which says the certification of the results of the count, and by the count, they mean the provisional count, because that's what this section is about, together with all ballots and envelopes, whether open or unopened, and other related material shall be delivered by the electoral board to the clerk of the circuit court and retained by him as provided for in sections 24.2668 and 24.2669, which just gives him generally the times and who can access things. And then the deal is that the provisional ballot log is other related material for purposes of
'Cause it has to go-
653.
Right, because it has to go with
0.1E. And that's why it has to go to the clerk, and that's why it's not public material in the same way that other things are. I don't have a problem necessarily with that. Oh, it's 653.01, sorry. I was saying 0.1 because I'm looking at the number that's on this page instead of the number that.
Other pieces are public, included with the statement of results. The poll book from, so the list of those who voted would be available. So those ballots that were accepted would be available, but the ballots that were rejected is essentially.
And those would include that poll book would include additional ballots that were accepted during the original ballot.
And that data is available because you can get the list of those who voted from the Department of Elections. Once again, it's not publicly available. It's available to qualified individuals or organizations, but it's broadly available.
Right, so if nobody is here at the meeting, then nobody will see it. frankly, as I look through the code, I don't even see a provision that identifies provisional ballot logs.
No.
That I would think if we have 5,000 provisional ballots, that without a log, it would be pretty tough to keep track of it. So I'm glad that we can create one. I think that as far as I can see, there's no reason why this office needs to retain it, because it's not information that tells us a whole lot. And therefore, if we want to call it really other related material and stuff it into the material that we send to the clerk of the courts, that's fine. But my understanding is that other jurisdictions allow photocopying of the log. That it seems kind of a little petty to tell people, well, it's public to you in the sense that you're allowed to read it and copy it by hand, but you better be a fast copier because we're not going to allow you to photocopy it. If so, at the very least, I would think that people have an absolute right to bring their own portable photocopy equipment in. But if we have a photocopier here, if somebody wants a photocopy, then I would think that that if so long as we charge an appropriate copying fee to anybody who wants one, that would be perfectly appropriate. And as I said, I think that's done elsewhere. And I'm told anyway that in the past, occasionally, we have a lot of people to do copies of it. Now I know that it became an issue. I'm not sure which election it was where somebody was here and he said, well, nobody gave me an opportunity to look at the log or to copy it. Well, he didn't ask. So that's water under the bridge. But it would seem to me that if somebody is here and asks for the log, I don't see any reason to tell them that, oh, you can read it and start writing really fast, but you can't photocopy it. But if they don't do that, if they don't ask for it, I'm quite happy to interpret Section E, other related material, as meaning that we send it to the clerk, and so if anybody wants to see it, they would have to get permission of the clerk to get it from there.
What information is on the redacted version?
So it has the voter's name. Once again, as we've established, there's no legal requirement to have a log. So the, Alyssa's raised her hand, so she'll correct me.
Okay.
It's direct, it is required that the election officers in the precinct create a log.
Yeah.
And
That
where
is
is
the
that?
obligation.
It's not in the provisional ballot.
Yeah.
thing.
The,
Now that she
so
says it, I know
so
that she's right.
on the state log, so it's the voter's name, address, and then if we've captured it, it's contact information, so phone number or email. What is redacted is like any part of the social security number. I think year of birth is public, but it's the reason they cast the provisional ballot. And then whether or not that ballot was counted, that is the redacted side. And any notes the electoral board makes would need to be redacted.
And why is that we can't? I mean, if it's public, if we publicly vote that, no, this person should not be allowed to have their ballot counted because they failed to include their social security number, anybody who was here at the meeting would have heard us say that. So that, I mean, I don't see how that is particularly private information.
Yeah, but we don't identify. This is another reason why. This is actually, now that I think about it, one of the things on the on the redacted version is we give a code to each one of those people, because we are not supposed to identify people by name when we vote in public. We can do so when we vote in private, not in public. That would allow that when we vote in public, the copy of the list is in somebody's hands and they can determine we accepted this ballot, we didn't accept that ballot. The reason for whether it's accepted or rejected is known. The reason that they cast the ballot is not, and we usually don't say. We might say we rejected it because you might be able to glean some information. We might reject a ballot because their registration wasn't accepted for failure to include required information. which gives you a hint that they were an SDR person, but
So the reason historically, because why do the provisional ballots and all this matter? So historically, provisional ballots in a tight election are the ones that can be contested in that contest period after the election. And so that's where some of this, but that's where the ones that really, because once you accept it, you can't go back and identify which vote belonged to a voter. It's,
Exactly. So
yeah, so
that's
it's
that
really,
you can't contest it. And
yeah, and that's where the electoral board's decision in that provisional ballot meeting is somewhat final. The only.
but that's why
witness
there are
it's not
authorized
are the notes.
representatives.
Yeah,
Is the
and,
point of the authorized representative at the meeting is if we say we're accepting something and they think that there's a reason that
or if
to
you.
make the case for that.
Or if you say you're not accepting something and it's for a reason like the voter didn't provide ID and that party thinks they can track down that voter and get their ID and turned in time by noon the day after by the deadline,
Right.
then, so it's reasons like that. But the question becomes after the election. So once the election's certified, like I said, that's why it gets sealed and sent with the election materials, because that's at that point in time, everything goes over to the courts and is sealed for that purpose.
Because then
So-
it's the court's problem.
Yeah.
Our problem.
all right, well,
Anyway,
I mean, my understanding is that Republican Party is the one that's been asking more for these.
Yes.
no, it's not. Yeah, it really depends. Both parties will be requesting it for this election.
Although I would assume
Not
that
for this one, for the
general.
November.
for the June election, Republicans would not be entitled to ask for it because there are no Republican primaries. Right?
Yeah.
They're not technically entitled.
They're not authorized, they would have to be authorized by a
A candidate.
candidate to attend the meeting.
In a
So-
primary, the parties don't get representatives. The
So I
candidate.
think it's not necessarily a pressing concern for this election in June. But as I said, just in hearing other people chatting, that other jurisdictions do provide that. You mentioned, Dominic, that there is some sort of advisory opinion from elect. I don't think from what I've seen, it directly addresses what we're talking about here, about whether or not somebody who has access to the provisional ballot log can copy by hand, but can't necessarily take out a photocopy of the provisional ballot log. I'm wondering if maybe an appropriate thing to do would be to ask elect to get their opinion as to what this is going, because apparently it comes up in a lot of jurisdictions and I
No,
got
it
different
comes
jurisdictions.
up.
Can
Yeah,
you get
no,
their
no.
attention? Because I feel like we don't always get their attention very well. as
No, the
electoral
electoral
members.
board members don't.
To say like, perhaps you can refresh the guidance, because as I said, it's not recent.
Yeah, it was refreshed in September.
Oh, okay, because I think the.
I want to
version
say it
you
was
sent me-
refreshed last
Yeah, and I think that if I remember the quote correctly, and the reason that this comes up is that the material from elect does say that the log can make notes about the log and that the log shall be available during the meeting,
Yeah, it says during the meeting.
not after the meeting.
It has to be available
Does say that.
no later than the start of the meeting.
It also says that it should be made available electronically or in paper form to authorized representatives of political parties or independent candidates. And then it says separately, copies of a redacted provisional log may be provided to authorized representatives during the meeting. In addition to what you said. So it's kind of, it seems.
Yeah, it's definitely not clear.
Yeah. So can I?
Needs to be clarified.
Contradictory.
Can I recommend that because I don't think this is gonna come up during the primary, that we table this discussion and discuss it again in the next regular meeting?
Yes,
Because as we prep. for
you
the-
can move to table my motion.
Okay.
I might even second that.
Okay, so we've had a motion, we've had a discussion.
Are
So
you moving to table
I am
my motion?
going to move that we table this motion.
You don't even have to set a date for it. We'll remove it when we need to.
Okay. And you're seconding.
I'll second it. which could be construed as me withdrawing my motion, but no, I would like it to be on the table.
No, and the reason why I asked that we table it for reconsideration is, as I said, I don't think this is an issue that's gonna come out during the primary, but it'll give us more time to discuss it for the general to work out the process.
And maybe get some more guidance from the
Yes.
back before we come to a final decision.
And you perhaps.
Oh, so I'm the chair.
Help me with-
For you to call it. Is, motion to table is not debatable. All in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion is tabled. Moving along, I don't believe we've set a final date for LNA testing. We had some,
June 3rd.
okay. What day of the week is that? Today's the 13th, so that should be a Monday.
June 3rd is a Tuesday.
Hey,
And you're right, I don't have it on my calendar, so that you guys don't have it on yours.
Yes, so I don't think it had been confirmed.
I think we had thrown that out there. Are we doing that first thing in the morning, 9 a.m. or
Yeah.
10 a.m. or whatever we don't
You
do?
do it at 8.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Okay.
It is a, it is
Better.
a,
And again, this is where we invite candidates and they are able to send a representative.
Yes,
We notify
because at
the
this stage, there is no. You do have to notify the party chair though. Candidates, but the party chair still, even in a primary. So that, but only the party having a primary is entitled.
I did not attend the LNA for early voting. Any issues arise? or
No. Well, yes, but that's why we do LNA and the problem was fixed and retested.
yes, it was.
It was on the poll book ballot printing side, not the scanner side.
Yeah, a receipt, one of the ballot styles was mislabeled as a provisional ballot when it was, yeah.
Regular ballot. So
So it was
one
like-
particular precinct was printing provisional ballots for everybody instead of.
But it was easily identified and
Fine,
rectified. And that's why I make everybody, we test every.
And that's why we
precinct
test that, right?
separately.
Question, I might have heard that some guys changing the test decks or something like this, having 2 test decks or something like this. Is that new about?
The Department of Elections issued a lot of information about LNA testing, going into this election. We reviewed their materials and did not change our process because our process met their standard, met if not exceeded their standards. In terms of having multiple test decks, we have multiple test decks, and one of the things we that's priority for me is that the ballots that you're testing on the equipment are coming from the source of where those ballots would be coming from. We get a test deck from our mail ballot vendor to make sure that those run through our high-speed scanner. We get a test deck, we print the test deck from the on-demand printer for early voting to make sure those ballots will be read by the equipment. And then on election day, we're getting a test deck by that printer to make sure the election day ballots will be read by the election day scanners. So,
I will note, the ballots come from the printers. We fill them out.
Yes.
So they are not giving us a test deck with bubbles filled in.
yeah, we don't get pre.
They're just giving us the ballot.
But-
We fill in.
But that it is really common for people to get pre-filled in, but
Yes,
we don't do
But
that.
we don't do, that's why I said that,
Yeah.
because I want to make sure.
But
that-
we'll have multiple sets
Yes.
of ballots.
Was that what they were talking about the multiple sets, is that we
Yeah, you don't want to use the same set
set
for
for
every.
everything, because it might,
But this is also why it's for me, it's really important to test, because if one printer's settings are off, then none of the ballots from that printer will be read.
right,
So that's why we test, like, this printer is going to be paired with that machine. We need to make sure ballots printed on it are going to work with that machine. Because there are places that have gotten themselves into trouble by not doing that.
of course.
Yeah.
So LNA will
We
be,
go overboard.
will be June 3rd at 8 a.m. at the warehouse facility. Gretchen, you will notify who needs to be notified.
Yep.
Item 8 is announcements.
Our next meeting. Oops, that's not.
Is technically scheduled for June 10th, I believe is the two.
That is correct.
Do we wish to cancel and just take up any business at the, is this what we're going to discuss?
Yes.
I think that that would be fine. The only reason to meet on the 10th is if there is some emergent issue and we can call an emergency meeting at it, like if we. I would say, just for the public's information, is my intention to, and I hope my colleagues will agree, we did this in November. My intention is to move that we open the canvas on Tuesday evening when polls close,
Yeah.
rather than Wednesday morning,
I'm fine with that too.
as it sometimes helps us clarify some reporting issues that. It was certainly helpful in November when there were a couple of precincts that had some transposed numbers that were just not making any sense. And so being able to open certain envelopes and information to get their statement of results rather than just their call-in information was helpful to get that information sorted early in the process rather than late.
We've also had a request to not start so early on Wednesday. I did run the request or an inquiry into why we started so early on Wednesday. I'll leave it at that. We like the team might be amenable to pushing because we're revamping our Canvas process a little bit. And so if we don't start having teams come in until a little bit later, we can probably push them back a little bit if there's a time rather than 8 a.m.
I would not say that the board is in the best position to decide if that makes sense.
Okay.
Well, without some input from you.
So,
In the sense that I understand that the reason we have started early in the past, or the team has started early, we don't always start early. Is that material needs to be, a certain defined set of material needs to be the clerk by noon.
Yep.
Which means that in order to get through 54 precincts and make sure everything is squared away in time for that to happen, we needed to start at 7.
Yep.
If in the process of changing procedures, we are rearranging when we do things and concentrating the stuff that needs to go to the clerk in the first part of the day and leaving other things that don't need to go to the clerk till whenever in the day.
or collecting materials so they can do a more exhaustive review of because there are things that we need, like data from the poll book, that just takes a minute to get. So instead of having the teams come in and instantly start reviewing paperwork, we can have them start going through poll books and stuff like that.
If
So,
you think starting at 9 or something would be,
like, because the part, my understanding is the board would like to be present for the part where they're opening envelope 2. But there are other pieces we can do so that we push back the start.
I
of
will
opening 2.
that I'm also the person that probably doesn't care if he gets here at 7. So I am not going to drive this decision, but if Gretchen, if you think that they can get everything done if they start at 9, then I'm not going to force them to be here at 7. Or me at 7 for that.
That's fine with me.
Okay. You don't start at 7 a.m. 8.
It's early. Barely conscious at that point after a 16-hour
So
day.
you have to keep moving. You can't let the sleep. You have to keep moving. The second you sleep.
I agree, because last month when I sat down for an hour at this meeting after moving all day, I almost couldn't get up. That was not a good idea.
Anyway,
Are there any other announcements? I don't think we can not announce this. We will be undergoing in the next couple of weeks more full demonstrations with each of the vendors that we are proceeding with in terms of election equipment. We have those more full demos are, I think, all half day,
all half day, 4 hours.
4 hours to
Next 3:30.
kind of, I think the idea is to kind of go through the full process from birth to death of an election to see how things work. And get a better sense of actually doing things with them rather than just what they were showing us in an hour-long presentation. So that process is ongoing and moving forward. I don't know, I don't think we've decided. My hope is still that November is the target that we'll have for the general and the fall new equipment, but
There are, of course, only a finite number of companies that offer this kind of equipment, and I think we're at least initially anyway, having 3 coming back. I don't consider myself an expert. I will go to these demonstrations, but I certainly encourage members of the public who have heard anecdotal information about any of these companies to share that with us. And if other jurisdictions have had good experiences with certain equipment or not so good, I would be happy to hear about that.
yes, so that we can make sure that we're paying attention to those things or asking questions about those things.
Will it be publicized when the presentations? Or is it?
They're not
They're-
public
they're-
because of security issues. They are not public.
Yeah.
We will,
security
it will be
proprietary.
us and staff that will do them. Along with potentially staff from the county on the IT side. So like the IT security people from the county that will be involved to confirm that element of the process.
You said you were looking for feedback. Are you gonna be providing the list of vendors?
Can we provide a list of vendors that we're bringing in?
How do we give feedback?
Non-public?
Well, there are only 5 companies, I think, in the world. that
Yeah,
have
well,
Potential.
no, there's more than 5 in the world, but there's only 5 certified for use in Virginia. And with some of the feedback we've received is anecdotally, somebody like my colleagues use this equipment in another jurisdiction. They like or don't like this feature about it. I got a detailed review of one of the equipment from my sister, who was a poll worker in another state, whether she knew she was giving it to me or not. So, yeah,
Are we, is this part of the process?
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm asking for advice. I know ultimately it's up to us, but
Yeah.
does the
I
board,
guess my question is, does the list of vendors live on the state website somewhere? That's public.
It used to.
somewhere there's gotta be a way for people. to-
Well, the 5 vendors are Heart, which is based out of Texas. Art Unison, which is what we currently have based out of California. ES&S, Fairfax County uses based out of flyover state, sorry to offend.
Yeah, they're in the
Clear Ballot based out of Massachusetts and Dominion. I don't know where Dominion. Oh, they're Colorado now. They were Canada. There are other Smartmatic, but only LA uses Smartmatic in the US, from what I know.
Are they,
They're based out of Venezuela.
but are they,
They're not, you can't use them in Virginia.
so those are the 5, Dominion, Heart, ES&S, Unison, and Dominion.
And there is one.
Wait, I said Dominion twice. Dominion, Heart, ES&S, Unison, Clear Valley.
And there's a website out there, it's a nonprofit that has the equipment that every jurisdiction in the state uses. So, verified voting, I think is the website. They keep track of everybody's equipment, so.
So those are the 5 we have to choose from. 3 of them will be coming in. So hopefully we will have more information as we progress through the summer.
Might be your colleagues at Fairfax, Gretchen, I think, 'cause they just got the delivery of the new ES&S ones. Maybe they could give you some feedback.
Part of the final assessment is doing a reference check for the equipment on things like that, so.
You know, if all 5 systems are ready to, Lord Frank choice voted down.
That was one of the requirements, so yes. All 5 meet those minimum standards for what we need in terms of ranked choice voting and other things.
But those standards are constantly changing, so it's not easy.
Yeah,
I just circle back to the date, because we didn't say on the date. So we want to leave June 10th as a possibility if we had. to.
Yes, so I would move that I will say cancel the June 10th meeting. The board will handle any business that needs to be handled that would normally be handled at its regular meeting on the 10th, at its certification meeting, which tentatively would be sometime the week of the 23rd. Did I phrase that in the form of a motion?
moved.
I moved.
Motion to move June 10th. Meeting to week of June 23rd.
I second that motion. Let's finish writing it.
Both parties are allowed at the certification.
Canvas is public, anyone can attend from the public.
So we'll settle on that date, I think, as we get closer to and we know what the work.
And yes, at some point, probably on the 18th, when we convene for the initial provisional meeting, we'll have a sense of when we're gonna do things. Since we won't have a June 10th meeting, I will include in announcements. Primary day is June 17th. The initial provisional ballot meeting, generally the public hearing part of it, where voters who wish to plead their case on their provisional ballots will appear, will be noon on Wednesday, the 18th. Canvas, as I said, will be opened on the evening of the 17th, but will start in earnest the morning of the 18th. We will not be working or meeting on the 19th, which is a holiday. There's no reason to. We generally don't have a lot to do on the Thursday anyway, because we have to wait for the Friday deadline. So there will probably be a provisional meeting sometime on Friday in the afternoon, once Friday, Saturday, Sunday, anticipate stuff. Possibly Monday. And then I think we're hoping that by Tuesday, even though we're pretty sure we have 10 days, that we were not taking 10 days.
No, we should be ready to finish the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday.
Yeah, so expect tentatively, we will confirm this later in June, but tentatively, the certification meeting will be either the 23rd Monday or the 24th Tuesday in the evening, as we usually do. Reminder, there's no ranked choice about voting on this, so there will be no tabulation sessions.
The office will be closed on June 19th. Observation of the holiday.
Yes, that's why we're not meeting or doing anything. We have decided not to be profligate with the county's money and pay overtime. To
Call
bring
it
people-
holiday.
Holiday pay to bring.
Holiday pay and overtime. It's the double whammy that week.
Any other announcements?
Yes.
Strategic plan
Oh, yeah.
Oh, should we update on the strategic plan?
will also be closed on Memorial Day,
Yes, well,
week from
one
Monday.
would hopefully.
And
Strategic plan, I believe all three of the subgroups have now met at least twice. I guess once, but in 2 sessions each once.
we're the only one who did that.
So they've met twice, I've met once. We're gonna continue to develop our stuff, and I think that the next large group where we'll all come back together is probably sometime over the summer after we've cleared the primary. With the idea that hopefully as we head into the fall, we'll have something that looks like a plan, even if it's not final plan. Any other announcements?
Yes, I'd like to just publicly congratulate Ben on his new job. We're gonna-
Ah, yes.
We're gonna miss him. Ben, we're gonna miss you, but congratulations.
Yeah.
What was the job?
So Ben Howard, who's been our mail ballot coordinator for a couple of years, is moving to Fairfax County to wrangle their mail ballots. So it is like a narrower focus than what he was doing here, but a much bigger lift in terms of mail ballots. Because Fairfax County obviously has 20% of the voters in the Commonwealth. And so their mail ballot precincts can make or break an election. So it's a big guess. It's a big job.
They're just in a different category. I mean, like, they're just in, where they have like 1 million voters or something. 1
I
million.
always go down to the attorney general race in 2015 came down to something like 340 votes statewide. So like every vote.
But Fairfax has like 1.1 million. I think second is Prince William, and they're at like
Virginia Beach.
Then they're like at 350,000. Like, that's the gap between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The rest of us are all sitting.
We only have 3% of the voters.
And we're still an extra
And
large.
we're still one of the top 10.
Yep. Going on. Thank
So
you.
really, like I
Yes,
said,
so we
Fairfax is
will-
in their own category, and then the next 9.
Yeah. So we're very sad to lose Ben, but we are very
Yes.
happy to be exporting some of our mail ballot tracking techniques to Fairfax County, and hopefully that'll give them a good leg up the ball.
Anything else? Then I will move that we adjourn.
I second that.
Any objection? Then this meeting is adjourned at 7:13.